The morning sun painted the wheat fields of New Busan in golden light. Lee Dae-ho stood on his office balcony, watching the harvest machines work across the endless farmland. Children ran between the crops, their laughter mixing with the sound of distant machinery. Today was the harvest festival, and families from across the colony had gathered to celebrate another successful year. Dae-ho smiled as he watched his own daughter, So-min, chase butterflies near the community center. His wife, Jin-ah, was setting up tables for the evening feast. After 15 years as colony administrator, he still felt proud of what they had built here. New Busan was home to over 2 million people, making it humanity's largest settlement outside Earth. The colony stretched across 3 continents of the planet Kepler 442b. Massive cities rose from fertile valleys, connected by transport tubes that moved people and goods at incredible speeds. Orbital stations circled overhead, processing raw materials and defending the peaceful world below. Park Min-seo checked her watch as she reviewed the morning security reports. As defense coordinator, she made sure the colony stayed safe from pirates and space debris. The orbital defense platforms showed green lights across the board. Everything was normal. "Commander Park," her assistant called out. "We're getting strange readings from the outer sensors." Min-seo frowned and walked to the main display. Dozens of objects were approaching from deep space. They were too large to be asteroids and moving too fast to be cargo ships. "Run identification scans," she ordered. The computer worked for several minutes before displaying an error message. "Unable to identify vessel types. Configuration unknown." Min-seo felt her stomach tighten. In 15 years, their sensors had cataloged every type of human ship ever built. These objects didn't match anything in their database. "Sound the alert," she said quietly, "and get me a direct line to Earth Command." The warning sirens began, wailing across New Busan just as the unknown ships dropped out of hyperspace. They appeared in perfect formation around the planet, hundreds of massive vessels that looked like nothing humans had ever built. Their hulls were dark metal covered, in strange symbols that seemed to glow with inner light. Kim Jae-wook was in his research lab when the sirens started. As the colony's lead scientist, he had been studying the planet's unique crystal formations. He dropped his equipment and ran to the window. The sky was full of alien ships. They hung in the air like metal mountains, blocking out the sun. Their weapons began charging with a sound like thunder that rolled across the entire planet. Jae-wook had never seen anything so terrifying and beautiful at the same time. His communication device crackled to life. "All personnel to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill." Min-seo was frantically trying to establish contact with the alien fleet. Her communication officers sent messages in every human language and mathematical sequence they knew. The aliens remained silent. "Try broadcasting our peaceful intentions," she ordered. "Tell them we're colonists, not military." The response came not in words, but in action. Energy beams lanced down from the alien ships, striking the orbital defense platforms. The stations exploded in brilliant flashes that lit up the sky like fireworks. In less than 5 minutes, New Busan's entire defense network was destroyed. Dae-ho gathered his family as chaos erupted around them. People were running in every direction, some toward the emergency shelters, others toward the spaceport. The transport tubes had stopped working, stranding thousands of people in the cities. "We need to get to the underground bunkers," he told Jin-ah, holding So-min tight against his chest. But they were too far away. The alien attack had begun in earnest. Massive energy weapons swept across the surface like deadly searchlights. Everything they touched simply vanished. Buildings, vehicles, people. The aliens were not trying to capture or occupy. They were trying to erase every trace of human presence. The main city of New Seoul disappeared in a matter of minutes. The beautiful towers and parks that had taken decades to build were reduced to glowing craters. The transport hub that connected the continents was vaporized along with the thousands of people trying to evacuate. Min-seo managed to send one final message before her command center was destroyed. Her fingers flew over the controls as energy beams struck buildings all around her. Emergency transmission to Earth Command. New Busan under attack by unknown alien force. Multiple species. Advanced technology. They are not accepting surrender. Repeat, they are not accepting surrender. Complete extermination in progress. Tell Earth. Tell them we tried to make peace. The transmission cut off as the defense headquarters vanished in a pillar of white fire. Jae-wook made it to his labs, emergency shelter just as the research complex was hit. The underground bunker shook violently, but its reinforced walls held. Through the security monitors, he watched in horror as the surface world died. The aliens were methodical and thorough. They destroyed the farms that fed the colony. They vaporized the factories that produced tools and medicine. They erased the schools where children learned and the hospitals where the sick were healed. Most terrible of all, they hunted down the evacuation ships. Families trying to escape in small vessels were blown apart before they could reach hyperspace. Larger transport ships loaded with refugees were destroyed as they climbed toward orbit. The aliens showed no mercy to anyone. The attack continued for 18 hours. When it finally stopped, New Busan was gone. The fertile farmland had been turned into fields of glass. The rivers had been boiled away. The cities were nothing but smoking craters that glowed with residual energy. Jae-wook emerged from his shelter 3 days later. The air was thick with ash and the smell of burning. He activated his emergency beacon and began searching for other survivors. His calls echoed across the dead landscape, but few answered. In the end, they found 47 people alive out of more than 2 million. They gathered in the ruins of what had been the capital city, a small group of shocked and traumatized survivors surrounded by the ashes of their world. Among them was Lee Dae-ho, who had saved his daughter but lost his wife when their shelter was hit. There was Dr. Yu Nari, who had been deep underground treating patients when the hospital above was destroyed. There was farmer Shinbo Ram, who had hidden in an old mine shaft and watched his family's farm turn to glass. On the 4th day, they found an alien artifact, a small device that projected a holographic message. The image showed representatives of 12 different alien species standing together. The creatures were unlike anything in human imagination, some reptilian, others insectoid, a few that seemed to be made of living crystal. The message was simple and clear, broadcast in perfect human language: your expansion ends here. Submit to the Corvin hegemony, or face extinction. This world was your warning. Jae-wook recorded everything with his surviving equipment: the faces of the dead, the ruins of their civilization, the alien message that promised more death if humanity did not surrender. Someone has to tell Earth what happened here, he said to the other survivors. They need to know what we're facing. The small group worked together to repair a damaged communication array. It took them 2 weeks, salvaging parts from the wreckage and jury-rigging connections with whatever they could find. When they finally sent their message toward Earth, it carried more than just information about the attack. It carried the voices of the survivors, speaking the names of the dead. It carried images of children's toys melted into the ground and family photos scattered across the wasteland. Most importantly, it carried a warning. The aliens were coming, and they would show no mercy to anyone who stood in their way. As the message raced through space toward humanity's home world, the survivors of New Busan began the grim work of staying alive in the ruins of their colony. They knew rescue would not come for months if it came at all, but they also knew that their sacrifice had not been meaningless. Earth would learn what had happened here. Humanity would know the price of expansion into a galaxy that was not as empty as they had believed. The war had begun with the destruction of New Busan. How it would end was now up to the billions of people on Earth who would soon receive the most terrible news in human history. The message from New Busan reached Earth on a quiet Tuesday morning. Fleet Admiral Cho Hyun-woo was reviewing routine patrol reports when his aide burst into his office with an expression of pure terror. "Sir, you need to see this immediately. Priority Alpha transmission from New Busan." Hyun-woo activated the secure channel, expecting news about crop yields or mining reports. Instead, he watched in growing horror as Park Min-seo's final transmission played on his screen. The images of alien ships and burning cities seemed impossible, like something from a nightmare. "Get me President Yoon Soo-jin on emergency channel," he ordered. "And wake up the entire Defense Council. Tell them it's code black." Within an hour, the most powerful people on Earth were gathered in the underground command center beneath Geneva. President Yoon Soo-jin sat at the head of a table surrounded by military leaders, scientists, and intelligence chiefs. The room fell, silent as they watched the complete recording from New Busan. Defense Minister Han Tae-young was the first to speak. 2.3 million people, gone in 18 hours. The survivors confirmed 12 different alien species working together, said Intelligence Director Lim Dong-hyun. They call themselves the Korvan Hegemony. Their technology is clearly superior to ours. President Yoon Soo-jin studied the alien message that had been left behind. The threat was clear: submit or face the same fate as New Busan. She thought about her own children, safe in their beds, unaware that humanity's future hung in the balance. "What are our options?" she asked quietly. Admiral Hyun-woo pulled up a holographic display of Earth's military forces. "Our active fleet consists of 300 combat vessels, plus another 800 ships in various support roles, against an enemy that destroyed an entire colony in less than a day." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood that Earth's military was designed to fight pirates and rebels, not an advanced alien empire. "There is another option," said Han Tae-young carefully. "Project Prometheus." The room fell silent. Project Prometheus was Earth's most classified military secret, known only to the highest levels of government. For 30 years, hidden shipyards throughout the solar system had been building a massive fleet in preparation for the day humanity might face an existential threat. "How many ships?" President Yoon Soo-jin asked. "As of last month, 500, and 87,000 combat vessels of various classes, plus support ships. That brings us to just over 600,000. The number stunned even the people who had authorized the project. For 3 decades, a significant portion of Earth's industrial capacity had been secretly devoted to military construction. Asteroid mining operations that the public thought were gathering raw materials for civilian use had actually been building the largest fleet in human history. "The ships are dispersed across 47 hidden facilities," Han Tae-young continued, "from the asteroid belt to the outer moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Each facility appears to be a normal civilian operation from the outside." Engineer Baek So-young brought up technical specifications on the main display. "The fleet includes everything from converted cargo haulers with military-grade weapons to massive dreadnought-class battleships. We've been preparing for this day since humanity first reached the stars. President Yoon Soo-jin made the decision that would change the course of human history. Activate Project Prometheus. Full mobilization. Every ship, every crew, every weapon we have." The orders went out. Across the solar system, using encrypted channels that had never been used before. On Jupiter's moon Europa, what appeared to be an ice mining station suddenly revealed massive hangar doors. Inside, rows of destroyers and cruisers powered up their engines for the first time. In the asteroid belt, mining platforms shed their disguises and became military shipyards. Automated factories that had been secretly producing weapons and ammunition for decades went into full production mode. The largest facility was hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon. Hangar doors that had been concealed under artificial craters opened to reveal the fleet's flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Incheon's Pride. Admiral Hyun-woo took command of the mobilization personally. He established his headquarters aboard the flagship and began the complex task of organizing 600,000 ships into a coherent fighting force. "We have crews for about 60% of the fleet," reported Captain Song Yuri, his chief of staff. "The rest will have to be operated by civilian volunteers and automated systems." The call for volunteers produced an overwhelming response. When the government announced that humanity was under threat from hostile aliens, millions of people stepped forward to serve. Cargo ship pilots, mining engineers, and space station technicians all volunteered to crew military vessels. Baek So-young worked 18-hour days retrofitting civilian ships with military equipment. Cargo haulers received armor plating and missile launchers. Passenger liners were converted into troop transports. Even small mining ships were armed with whatever weapons could be mounted on their hulls. "The aliens have superior technology," she explained to her engineering teams. "But they've never faced anything like this. No species in the galaxy has ever fielded a fleet this size." Intelligence Director Lim Dong-hyun analyzed every piece of data from New Busan. His teams studied the wreckage of alien weapons and the design of their ships. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. Their energy weapons are incredibly powerful, but they seem to require significant charging time between shots. he reported to the command staff. Their ships are heavily armored but not particularly maneuverable. They fight like they expect their enemies to meet them in formal battle formations. What does that tell us? Admiral Hyun-woo asked. They're used to fighting civilized wars against other advanced species. They've probably never faced an enemy desperate enough to use swarm tactics or willing to accept massive casualties to achieve victory. The preparation took 3 months. During that time, humanity's entire economy was converted to military production. Factories that had made consumer goods now produced ammunition. Shipyards that had built cargo vessels now constructed warships. The people of Earth rallied behind the war effort with a determination that surprised even their leaders. Families worked overtime in munitions factories. Children collected scrap, metal for the war effort. Elderly people who remembered Earth's ancient wars shared their knowledge with younger generations. The survivors from New Busan were brought to Earth and treated as heroes. Kim Jae-wook became the face of human resistance. His story broadcast across every news network. The images of the destroyed colony were shown repeatedly, ensuring that every person on Earth understood what they were fighting for. "They think we'll surrender," Jae-wook said in his famous speech to the United Nations. "They think the loss of one colony will make us submit to their empire. They don't understand that they've just made the worst mistake in galactic history. They've shown humanity what happens to our children when we're not strong enough to protect them." Training camps were established across Earth and its colonies. Millions of people learned basic military skills. Children as young as 12 practiced emergency procedures. The entire planet became an armed camp preparing for war. The fleet assembled slowly, ship by ship, in the empty space beyond Pluto. The gathering created the largest concentration of military power in human history. 600,000 vessels formed a metal cloud that could be seen from Earth with telescopes. Admiral Hyun-woo toured the fleet in a small shuttle, marveling at what humanity had accomplished. Massive battleships floated alongside converted mining ships. Professional military crews worked beside civilian volunteers. The diversity was chaotic, but it was also humanity's greatest strength. "The aliens expect us to fight like they do," he explained to his senior commanders. "They expect formations and honor and predictable tactics. Instead, we're going to hit them with everything we have, all at once, from every direction." The final piece of preparation was psychological. Earth's best writers, artists, and speakers worked to prepare the fleet for what they would face. Every crew member watched recordings of New Busan's destruction. They learned the names of the dead. They understood that failure meant the extinction of the human race. President Yoon Soo-jin gave the final speech before the fleet departed. Standing on the bridge of the Incheon's Pride, surrounded by representatives from every nation on Earth, she spoke words that would be remembered for generations. "Our children lie dead on a world far from home. Our people were murdered by creatures who see us as insects to be crushed. They believe we will submit to their empire out of fear. They are wrong. We are going to show them what happens when humans are angry. We are going to show them what happens when humans fight for their families. We are going to show them that the galaxy belongs to those brave enough to claim it." The fleet began its journey 8 months after New Busan's destruction. 600,000 ships entered hyperspace simultaneously, creating a light show that was visible from Earth's surface. They carried with them the hopes and rage of an entire species. Behind them, Earth continued preparing for war. If the fleet failed, the home world would be ready to sell its life dearly. But Admiral Hyun-woo was confident that would not be necessary. Humanity was coming to the Corvin hegemony. The journey to Corvin space would take 8 months through regions of the galaxy that no human had ever explored. Fleet Admiral Cho Yun-woo stood on the bridge of the Incheon's Pride, watching 600,000 ships maintain formation around his flagship. The sight still amazed him, humanity's largest fleet stretching across space like a metal galaxy. Navigation Officer Park Ji-hoon worked at his station, plotting their course through uncharted systems. The direct route to Corvin territory would take them through 17 star systems, but intelligence suggested that path was heavily patrolled by alien forces. "I recommend we take the Northern Passage," Ji-hoon reported. "It adds 2 weeks to our journey, but we'll avoid their main shipping lanes. The element of surprise is our biggest advantage." Admiral Hyun-woo nodded. "Make it so. Signal the fleet to adjust course. The massive armada changed direction like a living thing. Battleships that were kilometers long moved alongside converted cargo ships, barely 100 meters in length. The diversity of the fleet was both its weakness and its strength. Captain Song Yuri commanded one of the fleet's destroyer squadrons from her ship, the Soul's Hammer. Her crews were a mix of career military officers and civilian volunteers who had never seen combat. The early weeks of the journey were spent in constant training. "Remember, we're not trying to match their technology," she told her squadron commanders during a video conference. "We're going to overwhelm them with numbers and tactics they've never seen before." The first test came 6 weeks into the journey. Long-range sensors detected a Corvin patrol fleet in the Kepler 186 system. Intelligence estimated 12 alien ships conducting routine sweeps of the outer planets. "This is our chance to learn about their capabilities," Admiral Hyun Woo decided. "Captain Song, take your squadron and make contact. Full stealth approach." Song Yuri led 20 destroyers into the system, using the radiation from the local star to mask their approach. The Soul's Hammer and its sister ships crept toward the alien patrol, weapons powered but concealed. The Corvin ships were beautiful, in a terrifying way. Their hulls were covered in crystalline armor that seemed to shift color in the starlight. Energy conduits ran along their surfaces like glowing veins. They moved with a grace that made human ships look clumsy by comparison. "All ships, this is Soul's Hammer," Song Yuri whispered into her communicator. "Attack pattern Delta, hit them fast and hard." The human destroyers struck without warning. Missiles and energy beams lanced out from 20 different directions, catching the alien patrol completely off guard. The Corvin ships tried to respond, but their weapons needed time to charge, and their formations were designed for formal combat. 3 alien ships exploded in the first 30 seconds. The rest tried to retreat, but the human ships pursued them relentlessly. Song Yuri watched as her crews performed maneuvers that would have been impossible for the rigid alien formations. "They fight like they're dancing," reported Lieutenant Nam Ho-jin from the Soul's Hammer's engineering section. "Beautiful formations, but no adaptability." The battle was over in 12 minutes. All 12 Corvin ships were destroyed or disabled. The human force had lost only 1 destroyer, and that ship's crew had been rescued before it exploded. Most importantly, they captured intact alien technology. Combat engineer Nam Ho-jin led salvage teams aboard the disabled Corvin vessels, recording everything they found. The alien ships were marvels of engineering, but they had weaknesses. "Their energy shields are incredibly strong against direct hits," Ho-jin reported back to the fleet. "But they have problems with multiple simultaneous impacts. If we can coordinate our attacks, we can overload their defenses." The intelligence was transmitted to every ship in the fleet. Engineering teams worked around the clock to modify their weapons based on what they had learned. New targeting systems were installed to coordinate attacks between multiple ships. The fleet's journey continued through empty systems and around the edges of alien territory. They encountered 2 more Corvin patrols, each time learning more about alien tactics and technology. The humans developed new strategies for each engagement. During one battle, Captain Kang Do-hyun of the heavy cruiser Busan's Revenge tested a desperate tactic. When his ship's weapons failed against a particularly powerful alien vessel, he ordered his crew to abandon ship and then rammed the enemy at full speed. The collision destroyed both ships, but it proved that human determination could overcome alien technology. The tactic was studied and refined, becoming part of the fleet's standard playbook. The months of travel created a unique culture within the massive fleet. Professional soldiers worked alongside civilian volunteers. Children, who had signed up as technical assistants, became combat veterans. Families served together on converted cargo ships that now bristled with weapons. Stories spread from ship to ship about the heroes of New Busan. Kim Jae-wook's face appeared on posters throughout the fleet. The names of the dead colonists were read during memorial services. Every person in the fleet understood what they were fighting for. Admiral Hyun Woo made regular tours of the fleet in his personal shuttle. He visited converted mining ships, where former asteroid workers now operated missile launchers. He spoke with families on passenger liners that had been turned into hospital ships. He thanked civilian engineers who worked 18-hour days, keeping the massive fleet operational. "We're not just carrying weapons," he told his staff. "We're carrying the entire human spirit. Every person in this fleet represents billions of people back home who are counting on us. The fleet grew stronger as it traveled. Engineering teams shared improvements across all 600,000 ships. Tactical innovations developed by one squadron were quickly adopted by others. The diversity that had seemed like a weakness became humanity's greatest advantage. Navigation Officer Park Ji-hoon discovered that the alien empire was larger than anyone had imagined. Corvan territory stretched across hundreds of star systems, with dozens of subject species providing ships and resources. The 12 founding species of the hegemony ruled over an empire that had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years. "They've conquered everyone they've ever encountered," Ji-hoon reported during a senior staff meeting. "According to the data we've recovered, they haven't faced serious resistance in over 8 centuries. Then they're due for a surprise," Admiral Hyun-woo replied grimly. The final month of the journey was spent in intensive preparation. Every ship in the fleet practiced coordination drills. Weapons were calibrated and recalibrated. Supplies were distributed to ensure that even the smallest vessels could fight effectively. Combat engineer Nam Ho-jin had become something of a legend throughout the fleet. His modifications had turned cargo haulers into effective warships. His tactical innovations had saved hundreds of lives during the patrol encounters. His crews worked with a dedication that inspired everyone around them. "The aliens think in terms of individual ship superiority," he explained to a gathering of engineering officers. "They can't understand how a converted mining ship could threaten their advanced cruisers. That's going to be their downfall." The survivors from New Busan had been distributed throughout the fleet as advisors and symbols. Their presence reminded everyone what they were fighting for. Kim Jae-wook served aboard the flagship, his scientific expertise helping to analyze alien technology. "They destroyed my world because they thought we were weak," he said during one of his regular addresses to the fleet. "They killed my friends and neighbors because they thought humans would surrender rather than fight. They're about to learn how wrong they were." As the fleet approached the edge of Corvan space, long-range sensors began detecting massive alien installations. Fortress worlds protected by orbital weapon platforms. Shipyards that could build vessels larger than anything in the human fleet. Defense networks that had never been seriously tested. Intelligence estimates they have over 100,000 ships defending their core systems, reported Captain Song Yu-ri during the final planning session. "Their individual vessels are more powerful than ours, and they have the advantage of fighting on their home territory." Admiral Hyun-woo studied the tactical displays surrounding his command chair. The odds were daunting, but he had seen what human determination could accomplish over the past 8 months. The fleet that had left Earth as a collection of desperate volunteers had become a unified fighting force. "They have experience and technology," he said to his assembled commanders. "But we have something they've never encountered before. We have 600,000 ships crewed by people who have nothing left to lose. We have humans who are fighting for their families and their future." The final jump into Corvan space was scheduled for the next day. 600,000 ships would emerge simultaneously at the edge of alien territory, announcing humanity's presence in the most dramatic way possible. The survivors of New Busan would finally have their revenge. The people of Earth would finally strike back against the empire that had threatened their children. The galaxy would learn that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. The long march through space was ending. The real war was about to begin. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Corvan territory like an avalanche of metal and fury. 600,000 ships materialized simultaneously, their engines blazing against the darkness of space. The sight was beautiful and terrifying. Humanity, announcing its presence in the galaxy with overwhelming force. Admiral Cho Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Incheon's Pride, watching as his massive armada deployed into attack formation. The diversity of the fleet was stunning. Massive battleships floated alongside converted cargo haulers, while swarms of smaller vessels darted between the larger ships like angry wasps. "Long-range sensors are picking up massive alien installations," reported Navigation Officer Park Ji-hoon. "Fortress Nexus Prime is directly ahead. Intelligence says it's their primary border defense." The alien fortress was a marvel of engineering that dwarfed even humanity's largest ships. Crystalline towers stretched for dozens of kilometers, bristling with energy weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Around it orbited hundreds of Corvan warships, their elegant forms moving in perfect formation. But the aliens had not expected this. Their sensors showed 600,000 human ships where intelligence had predicted perhaps a few dozen. The fortress's communication arrays were frantically transmitting warnings deeper into Corvan space. "They're trying to call for reinforcements," observed Intelligence Officer Lim Dong-hyun from his station. Their patrol reports said humans were a primitive species confined to one star system. "Today they learn how wrong they were," Admiral Hyun-woo replied grimly. "Admiral Ryu, begin the assault." Admiral Ryu Sung-min commanded the fleet's vanguard from his flagship, the Daegu's Thunder. His ships were a mix of purpose-built warships and heavily modified civilian vessels. The crews were eager for battle after 8 months of travel. "All ships, this is Daegu's Thunder," Ryu broadcast to his forces. "Today, we begin the liberation of the galaxy. Attack Formation Alpha. Show them what happens when humans are angry." MVE. Vanguard charged toward Nexus Prime like a tidal wave of destruction. The alien defenders tried to respond with their traditional tactics, elegant formations, and precisely timed energy volleys. But they had never faced an enemy like this. Captain Oh Min-ji commanded a squadron of converted mining ships that had been armed with military-grade missiles. Her crews were former asteroid workers who knew every bolt and wire of their vessels. They flew their ships like extensions of their own bodies. "Mining Squadron 7, follow my lead," she ordered as energy beams from the fortress lit up space around them. "Remember, we're not trying to look pretty. We're trying to win." Her ships scattered in all directions, making them impossible to target with the aliens' precise weapons. They darted between the larger Corvan vessels, firing missiles at point-blank range before spinning away to avoid return fire. The aliens tried to adjust their tactics, but their ships were designed for formal combat. When human vessels suddenly changed direction or broke formation, the Corvan targeting systems couldn't adapt fast enough. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for centuries found themselves outmaneuvered by converted cargo haulers. Captain Song Yu-ri led her destroyer squadron in a coordinated assault on the fortress's main weapons array. The Soul's Hammer and its sister ships moved in perfect synchronization, their attacks timed to overload the alien shields. "Remember what Engineer Nam taught us," she told her crews. "Multiple simultaneous impacts. Don't give their shields time to recharge." 20 destroyers opened fire at exactly the same moment. The fortress's shields flickered and failed under the coordinated assault. Missiles and energy beams struck the crystalline towers, sending fragments spinning into space. The battle for Nexus Prime became a masterclass in human adaptability versus alien precision. The Corvan ships were individually superior, faster, more heavily armed, better shielded. But they fought like they were performing a dance, beautiful and predictable. The humans fought like they were brawling. Ships rammed enemy vessels when their weapons failed. Cargo haulers used their industrial equipment as weapons. Fighter pilots performed maneuvers that would have been considered impossible by alien standards. Combat engineer Nam Ho-jin watched the battle from his station aboard a converted passenger liner. His ship, the New Seoul Express, had been fitted with the most advanced sensors in the fleet. He coordinated attacks between squadrons, finding weaknesses in alien formations. "Corvan battleship at Grid 77 is damaged," he reported. "All ships in Sector 4 converge on that target. Hit it before it can retreat." Dozens of human ships swarmed the wounded alien vessel. Mining ships used their cutting lasers. Cargo haulers fired improvised missiles. Even small courier vessels contributed to the assault. The proud Corvan battleship was overwhelmed and destroyed by enemies it would never have considered threats. The psychological impact on the aliens was devastating. For centuries, they had ruled through technological superiority and tactical precision. Now they faced an enemy that seemed to ignore all the rules of civilized warfare. Captain Kang Do-hyun proved this point when his heavy cruiser, the Busan's Revenge, suffered critical damage during an assault on an alien dreadnought. Instead of retreating, he ordered his crew to abandon ship and then set course directly for the enemy vessel. "This is for New Busan," he transmitted as his ship accelerated toward the alien dreadnought. The collision destroyed both vessels in a massive explosion that lit up half the battlefield. The sight horrified the alien crews, who couldn't understand why anyone would deliberately sacrifice themselves for tactical advantage. But the humans understood. Every person in the fleet had seen the recordings from New Busan. They knew what the aliens had done to defenseless colonists. They were fighting not just for victory, but for revenge. The fortress's main command center tried desperately to coordinate a defense, but human tactics made no sense to them. Squadrons would suddenly split apart and attack from 6 different directions. Ships would feint retreat and then turn back to attack. Civilian vessels would charge directly at their most powerful warships. Commander Velthak, the Sector officer in charge of Nexus Prime's defense, watched his carefully planned formations fall apart. His species had conquered dozens of worlds through superior technology and tactical discipline. These humans fought like mad creatures with no regard for their own safety. All units, fall back to defensive formation beta, he ordered. Concentrate. Fire on their largest vessels. But even that didn't work. When the aliens focused on the human battleships, swarms of smaller vessels would attack their flanks. When they tried to deal with the smaller ships, the battleships would advance and pummel them with heavy weapons. Admiral Ryu Sung-min recognized that the aliens were beginning to break. Their formations were becoming ragged, their responses slower and more desperate. It was time to press the advantage. All ships, general assault, he ordered. Every vessel, every weapon, everything we have. End this. 600,000 human ships converged on Nexus Prime simultaneously. The sight was overwhelming, a metal storm that blocked out the stars. Alien gunners tried to target the approaching vessels, but there were simply too many. The fortress's shields failed completely under the massive assault. Its crystalline towers cracked and shattered. Its weapon arrays went dark one by one. The proud symbol of Corvan power was reduced to debris in less than an hour. The surviving alien ships tried to retreat, but human vessels pursued them relentlessly. Captain Oh Minji's mining ships chased down fleeing cruisers, fighter squadrons, harassed damaged battleships. No alien vessel escaped to carry word of what had happened. When the battle ended, Nexus Prime was gone. The fortress that had guarded the approaches to Corvan space for over 1,000 years had been reduced to floating wreckage. Hundreds of alien ships had been destroyed or captured. The human fleet had lost over 3,000 vessels, but Admiral Hyun Woo was satisfied with the trade. They had announced their presence in the most dramatic way possible. The aliens now knew that humanity was not going to surrender quietly. Signal the fleet, he ordered. All ships advance into Corvan space. It's time to carry this war to their home worlds. The 600,000 remaining ships formed up and began moving deeper into alien territory. Behind them, the wreckage of Nexus Prime drifted slowly through space, a monument to alien arrogance and human determination. News of the battle raced ahead of the fleet through Corvan communication networks. For the first time in centuries, the hegemony faced an enemy that could challenge their dominance. The species that had ruled the galaxy through fear and superior technology now found themselves on the defensive. The war had truly begun. Humanity had served notice that the destruction of New Busan would not go unpunished. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans decided to fight for their future. The news of Nexus Prime's destruction sent shockwaves through the Corvan hegemony. For over 1,000 years, the fortress had stood as an unbreakable barrier against any threat from the outer rim. Now it was gone, destroyed by a species that their intelligence had dismissed as primitive insects. High Commander Velthak of the Sector stood before the Hegemony Council on the capital world of Sector Prime. The 12 species that ruled the galaxy looked at him with expressions ranging from disbelief to panic. The aquatic Gelanth floated in their life support tanks, their tentacles writhing with agitation. The crystalline Prexnor changed colors rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in their species. 600,000 ships, Velthak reported, his reptilian voice carrying across the vast chamber. Our long-range sensors confirmed the count. The humans have assembled the largest fleet in recorded galactic history. Impossible, hissed Commander Zartok of the insectoid Vorth. Our reports said they were confined to a single star system. How could they build such a force? They were building in secret for decades, Velthak replied. Hidden shipyards throughout their solar system. They prepared for this war before we ever encountered them. The hegemony had ruled through a combination of technological superiority and careful political control. They conquered new species one at a time, using overwhelming force to crush resistance before it could spread. Never before had they faced an enemy capable of challenging their entire empire. Meanwhile, the human fleet pushed deeper into Corvan space. Admiral Cho Hyun-woo had established a forward command base on the captured world of Corvan Beta, a minor industrial planet that surrendered without a fight when the massive fleet appeared in orbit. Intelligence Officer Lee Hae-won worked from the planet's former military headquarters, coordinating with the liberated populations they were finding throughout Corvan territory. The hegemony's empire was built on the backs of dozens of conquered species, many of whom had been waiting centuries for a chance at freedom. "The Thekral miners want to join our cause," she reported to Admiral Han-woo. "They've been enslaved by the Corvan for 800 years. They know the locations of every military installation in this sector." The humans quickly learned that they were not fighting a unified enemy. The Corvan hegemony was actually a collection of species held together by fear and mutual dependence. The founding members, the Sektar, Vorth, and others, lorded over dozens of subject races who provided labor and resources. Combat engineer Nam Ho-jin found the abandoned Corvan facilities fascinating. Their technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also rigid and predictable. Every ship was built to exact specifications. Every weapon system followed precise protocols. There was no room for improvisation or adaptation. "They've been using the same basic designs for centuries," he explained to Admiral Hyun-woo during a planning session. "Their ships are marvels of engineering, but they can't adapt quickly to new situations. That's why our chaotic tactics work so well against them." The human fleet had lost ships in every engagement, but their diversity meant they could replace losses in ways the aliens couldn't understand. When a squadron of destroyers was destroyed, it was replaced by converted cargo ships that fought just as effectively. When battleships were damaged, civilian engineering crews worked around the clock to repair them. Logistics coordinator Jung Min-ho had perhaps the most difficult job in the fleet. Keeping 600,000 ships supplied across dozens of star systems required a miracle of organization. He worked with a team of former shipping executives and supply chain managers who treated the war like the ultimate logistics challenge. "We're operating supply lines longer than any in human history," he reported to the senior staff. "But the captured Corvan facilities are helping. Their automated factories can produce ammunition if we reprogram them correctly." The psychological warfare was just as important as the military campaign. Every liberated world received broadcasts featuring Kim Jae-wook and the other survivors of New Busan. The story of the colony's destruction and humanity's response spread throughout Corvan space, inspiring resistance movements and causing panic among the ruling species. The first major crack in the hegemony appeared when the aquatic Gelinth withdrew their fleets to defend their water worlds. Their representative on the High Council, Speaker Mordal, made the announcement during an emergency session. "The humans are unlike any enemy we have faced," Mordal gurgled through his translator. "They fight without honor, without rules, without fear of death. We must protect our own worlds before it is too late." The Gelinth withdrawal left a gap in the hegemony's defenses that Admiral Hyun-woo was quick to exploit. Wing Commander Shin Ye-jin led fighter squadrons through the undefended space, striking at supply convoys and isolated bases. Her pilots flew converted civilian craft that had been modified with military engines and weapons. They were faster and more maneuverable than anything in the Corvan fleet, but they also required skilled pilots who could think quickly and adapt to changing situations. "Remember, we're not trying to win fighter duels," she told her squadron leaders. "We're trying to disrupt their operations and force them to spread their defenses thin. Hit and run. Always hit and run." The Prexnor crystalline beings were the next to break ranks. Their slow, deliberate thought processes made them excellent strategists, but poor tactical commanders. When human forces began attacking multiple targets, simultaneously they couldn't process the information fast enough to respond effectively. "The humans think too quickly," reported Prexnor strategic coordinator Xiao Tem during another emergency council session. "Their decisions change faster than we can analyze them. We respectfully request permission to negotiate with them directly." "Hi." Commander Velthak watched his empire crumbling with growing desperation. The Sektar had built the hegemony through patient conquest and careful planning. They had always fought enemies one at a time, using superior technology and overwhelming force to crush resistance. But the humans were different. They seemed to thrive on chaos and uncertainty. Their fleets operated without central coordination, yet somehow achieved perfect tactical synchronization. Their ships were inferior individually, yet superior collectively. The decisive moment came when Admiral Quan J. Sung led a massive assault on the Corvan stronghold of Fortress Eternal. The ancient installation had never fallen in over 2,000 years of warfare. Its shields had repelled the greatest fleets in galactic history. All ships, this is Admiral Quan, he broadcast to the assembled human forces. Today we prove that nothing built by tyrants can stand against free people fighting for their families. The assault on Fortress Eternal became legend within hours. 200,000 human ships attacked simultaneously from every possible angle. Mining vessels used industrial equipment to tear holes in the station's hull. Passenger liners rammed defensive platforms. Even small courier ships contributed to the overwhelming assault. The fortress's automated defenses tried to respond, but they had been programmed to fight conventional enemies using traditional tactics. The chaotic human assault overloaded every system. Shields failed, weapons malfunctioned, and structural supports collapsed under the relentless bombardment. When Fortress Eternal finally fell, the site could be seen from orbit around Sector Prime. The massive explosion lit up space, like a second sun, visible even through the capital world's atmosphere. Citizens throughout the hegemony watched their most powerful symbol reduced to debris. The psychological impact was devastating. If Fortress Eternal could fall, then nowhere in Corvan space was safe. Resistance movements erupted on dozens of worlds. Subject species declared independence. Even some of the founding members began seeking separate peace agreements with humanity. High Commander Veltak made one final attempt to save his empire. He gathered the remaining loyal fleets for a last stand in the Sector system. Over 50,000 Corvan ships took position around their capital world, determined to fight to the death rather than surrender. Admiral Hyun Woo brought the full human fleet to meet them. 600,000 ships emerged from hyperspace around Sector Prime, creating a metal wall that stretched across the entire star system. The sight was overwhelming. Humanity's entire military might concentrated in one place. The final battle lasted 3 days. The Corvan fought with desperate courage, using every weapon and tactic they possessed, but they were facing an enemy that had learned to fight without rules, without fear, and without mercy. Captain O. Minji's mining ships carved through Corvan formations like industrial equipment processing asteroids. Captain Song Yuri's destroyers coordinated attacks that overloaded alien shields. Even civilian vessels pressed forward, their crews determined to finish what the aliens had started at New Busan. When the last Corvan battleship finally surrendered, High Commander Velthak himself transmitted the message that would end the war. His proud voice was broken with defeat as he spoke words that no Sector had ever imagined saying. To the human fleet, this is High Commander Velthak of the Sector hegemony. We surrender unconditionally. We request terms for the cessation of hostilities. Admiral Hyun Woo accepted the surrender from the bridge of the Incheon's Pride. Around him, his staff worked to coordinate the massive fleet that had just. The surrender of the Corvan hegemony marked the end of the largest war in galactic history. Admiral Cho Hyun-woo stood on the observation deck of the Incheon's Pride, watching as Corvan ships powered down their weapons and transmitted surrender codes. Around Sector Prime, 600,000 human vessels maintained formation, a constant reminder of humanity's overwhelming victory. President Yoon Soo-jin arrived from Earth 3 weeks after the final battle. Her diplomatic vessel, the New Soul, was escorted by a full battle group as it approached the conquered capital world. The sight of a human president landing on Sector Prime would have been unthinkable just 1 year earlier. The peace negotiations took place in the hegemony's former council chambers. The vast hall had once hosted representatives from across the galaxy, all of them subjects or allies of Corvan power. Now it held a very different gathering. High Commander Velthak sat at what had once been the position of honor, but now felt like a defendant's dock. His reptilian features showed none of their former arrogance. Around him sat the surviving leaders of the 12 founding species, each one stunned by the completeness of their defeat. President Yoon Soo-jin took her place at the head of the table. flanked by Admiral Hyun-woo and Ambassador Choi Yun-soo. The human delegation was small, but confident. They represented a species that had proven its strength beyond any doubt. "The terms are simple," President Yoon Soo-jin began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Complete withdrawal from all conquered territories, full reparations for the destruction of New Busan, and submission to a new galactic council where humanity holds the deciding vote." Velthak's claws scraped against the table surface. "You would make us prisoners in our own space?" "You made the choice when you decided to commit genocide," Admiral Hyun-woo replied coldly. "You destroyed an entire colony of peaceful farmers and children. You threatened to exterminate the human race. These are the consequences of that decision." Ambassador Choi Yun-soo had spent months preparing for this moment. She had studied the political structure of every species in the former hegemony, identifying potential allies and understanding ancient grievances. Her job was to build a new order from the ashes of the old. "The Galactic Liberation Alliance will include all species that choose to join," she explained to the assembled delegates. "Former hegemony subjects will have full membership rights. Former rulers will have limited participation until they prove their commitment to peace." The negotiations revealed just how fragile the hegemony had actually been. Species after species stepped forward to declare independence and join the new alliance. The Thekral miners, who had been enslaved for 8 centuries, volunteered to serve as the new organization's industrial base. The artistic Velnari offered their worlds as cultural centers where all species could gather peacefully. Many of the subject races had horror stories about Corvan rule. The insectoid Clithar had seen their population reduced to 10% of its original size through forced labor. The peaceful Morgenti had been forbidden to practice their traditional religion for over 400 years. Intelligence Officer Lee Hae-won documented every testimony, creating a comprehensive record of hegemony crimes. The evidence would serve as justification for the harsh terms being imposed on the former rulers. "They didn't just conquer worlds," she reported to President Yoon Soo-jin. "They systematically destroyed cultures, enslaved entire species, and committed genocide whenever resistance emerged. What they did to New Busan was standard operating procedure for them." The economic terms of the peace treaty were devastating for the former hegemony members. Their most productive worlds were placed under human administration. Their military shipyards were converted to civilian production. Their fleets were reduced to small patrol forces suitable only for local defense. Logistics coordinator Young Min Ho oversaw the practical implementation of the new order. His teams worked with liberated species to establish new trade routes and supply chains. The galaxy's economy had been designed to serve Corvan interests, but now it would be restructured to benefit everyone. "The hegemony hoarded advanced technology and restricted it to the ruling species," he explained during a planning session. "We're going to share everything. Every species in the Alliance will have access to the best technology and resources available." Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo established permanent human naval bases throughout former Corvan space. The massive fleet that had conquered the galaxy would remain as a guarantee of the new peace. No species would ever again face the threat of extinction that had driven humanity to war. Combat engineer Nam Ho-jin found himself in charge of one of the most important projects in galactic history. His teams were dismantling Corvan weapons of mass destruction and converting military facilities to peaceful purposes. The technology that had oppressed the galaxy for centuries would be used to improve life for everyone. "They built incredible things," he admitted during a tour of a former Corvan research facility. "But they used all of it for war and conquest. We're going to use the same technology to heal the damage they caused." The most moving moment of the peace process came when Kim Jae-wook addressed the assembly. The survivor of New Busan had become humanity's most recognizable representative, his story broadcast across the galaxy. Now he stood before the former rulers who had ordered his world's destruction. "You killed my wife," he said simply, looking directly at High Commander Velthak. "You killed my children, my friends, my neighbors. 2.3 million innocent people died because you thought humans were too weak to resist." The chamber fell silent as Jae-wook continued. "But you made a mistake. You thought destroying one colony would make us surrender. Instead, you taught us what we were fighting for. You showed us what happens when evil goes unchallenged." Velthak could not meet the humans' eyes. The proud sector commander who had once ruled star systems was reduced to silence by the quiet accusation of a civilian scientist. The people of New Busan are gone, Jae-wook concluded. But their sacrifice saved the galaxy from your empire. Their deaths have meaning because they led to your defeat and the freedom of billions of beings. The formal treaty signing took place 1 month after the negotiations concluded. Representatives from over 200 species gathered in the reconstructed council chamber. The document they signed would reshape galactic civilization for generations to come. President Yoon Soo-jin signed first, followed by the leaders of newly liberated worlds. The former hegemony members signed last, their signatures representing acknowledgement of defeat rather than voluntary agreement. Captain Song Yuri, now promoted to admiral, commanded the human fleets that escorted former Corvin leaders to their reduced territories. The proud species that had once ruled the galaxy found themselves confined to small reservation worlds under constant human oversight. It could have been different, she told High Commander Velthak, as his transport ship approached its destination. If you had chosen diplomacy instead of genocide, we might have been allies. Now you'll spend the rest of your lives as reminders of what happens when someone threatens human children. The new galactic capital was established on Libris, a neutral world that had never been fully conquered by the hegemony. The planet's vast libraries and academic institutions made it perfect for hosting the diverse alliance of free species. Ambassador Choi Yun-soo became the first Director General of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Her inauguration was attended by representatives from across the galaxy, many of them species that had been hidden or enslaved for centuries. Wing Commander Shin Ye-jin, now Admiral Shin, established the Alliance's new fleet academy. Young beings from dozens of species would learn to serve together, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. We're not building an empire, she told the first class of cadets. We're building a community where every species can grow and thrive. The humans will lead, but we lead by serving others, not by conquering them. The reconstruction of the galaxy proceeded rapidly. Former hegemony subjects threw themselves into the work of building new civilizations. Advanced technology that had been restricted to the ruling class was shared freely. Trade flourished between worlds that had been isolated for centuries. On Earth, monuments were erected to honor the heroes of the war. The names of every ship and crew member lost in the campaign were carved in stone. But the greatest monument was the galaxy itself, transformed from a place of oppression into a community of free worlds. The final ceremony took place 5 years after the war's end. On the anniversary of New Busan's destruction, representatives from across the galaxy gathered to dedicate a memorial to the colony's victims. The ceremony was held on the restored world itself, now a beautiful park planet where beings from every species could come to remember and reflect. Kim Jae-wook, now elderly and honored throughout the galaxy, spoke the names of the dead one final time. Each name was followed by a moment of silence, a chance for the galaxy to remember the price of freedom. They died as farmers and teachers and children, he said as the ceremony concluded. But their deaths made possible the liberation of the galaxy. They would be proud to know that their sacrifice led not to revenge, but to justice. Not to conquest, but to freedom for all beings. As